Is she part of the
No.
She sounds weird talking on the phone. So hello.
Hi!
Thank you guys for coming. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
So I don't know how many of you know about a little bit about my story, but you know, I had a rough upbringing, and unfortunately I know far too many of you can relate to some of the pain and broken homes and things like that. So I am going to actually start right around the time I was in 8th grade, and I'm gonna read some of chapter 6, and then I'm gonna skip over to chapter 8, depending on how long you guys want me to read.
Forever.
So
Just keep reading the whole book.
while I was growing up, Mom worked full-time in a factory, but she always came home and made time to cook for us, do laundry, get what we needed for school, make sure the house was in order, and provide what she could that we needed. My mom still loves to do these things for me when I visit her in Canada. Today I can appreciate the backdrop behind my mom's way of being, but as a teenager, the fact is it hurt. I couldn't approach her about things that were important to me, like how I felt when my dad left. That was a big one. His leaving was traumatic. I didn't understand what was happening, and I didn't get an explanation. He was here one minute and gone the next. Because my mom didn't acknowledge my feelings of confusion, I didn't feel she was a safe place to use my voice. Whenever I would talk to her about something that was bothering me, I'd have the gnawing feeling I was more of a burden to her than simply a child who needed her mom. So I quickly decided it was better to leave her alone. Along the way, I came to some pretty unhealthy conclusions. I wasn't important. My feelings weren't valid. My thoughts didn't matter. So I learned how to cope with what I could handle on my own by stuffing it inside. I locked the most upsetting and traumatizing events in a place so deep I'd hoped I'd never be able to dig them out. When I was in 8th grade, I started hanging out with the wrong group of girls, the ones who were always getting in trouble for something. Stealing was our cheap thrill. We especially got a kick out of stealing ketchup chips, the zesty cheese Doritos out of the school cafeteria. I know, big deal. Want to hear a really embarrassing secret between just you and me?
Yes.
My friends and I called ourselves the Chipettes. How cheesy is that? The 6 of us were big shots, rebels without a clue. We were joined at the hip. We did everything together. We had slumber parties, we swapped clothes, we pined after cute boys, we complained about our parents, we shared our disdain for school, and of course, we got off on our small-town criminal activity, like stealing chips, and when we were feeling super cocky, cheap red lipstick from the local drugstore. 5 of us also loved to sing and were involved in the school tour choir. One day, the choir was scheduled to perform a concert at a huge mall in London, Ontario. People all over the mall making their way through the food court, hustling in and out of department stores to rummage through clearance racks, and dragging reluctant husbands and whiny children up and down the escalators, would hear our melodic repertoire, like my all-time favorite, Chicago's You're the Inspiration. The 5 of us were excited about performing, but mostly we were psyched about spending a school day at the mall. I sensed something weird on the bus ride here. I sat on a 2-seater by myself while my friends sat across from me. The girls chatted away in their private world, leaning into each other at such an angle I couldn't help but feeling they were ignoring me. They nodded my way every so often as I tried to force my way into their conversation. They were polite, but curt. It felt awkward, and I felt left out. Did I do something wrong? Did I say something wrong? As the bus bounced along the highway, the massive billboards and gray office building flashing by, my hurt feelings festered. I ignored the rest of the choir as they loudly belted out their singing parts, preparing for the big debut. When the bus finally rolled into the mall parking lot, my friends barged their way to the front of the bus, leaving me to quicken my pace to keep up. We had an hour to walk around before we had to meet in line for the concert. The teachers barked out their orders, reminding us not to be late even a minute, then finally gave us permission to go. We were like stallions being released into the wild. or in this case, into an endless array of stores where we could salivate over a pair of Doc Martens, blinding patterned hammer pants, or the latest Guns N' Roses CD. While I stood in the middle of my best friends, I couldn't ignore the tension, like they were almost forcing themselves to be in my presence. I noticed they were looking at each other with knowing glances. Finally, they nudged one of the girls forward to face me. She was looking sheepish, uncomfortable, and couldn't look into my eyes. It was obvious she didn't want to say what she was about to, but knew there was no way around it. "We don't want to hang out with you today, Pattie." She paused and raised her eyes to the ceiling before letting out a deep sigh. "And, well, we don't want to hang out with you anymore either, or be our friend." The words punched me in the gut. The blow was so sharp it punctured a hole in the protective layer I had built over the years to defend against rejection and abandonment. The wound traveled further and deeper than just being told someone didn't want to be my friend. It struck a familiar chord at a level I didn't know existed. My eyes welled with tears. Another one of my so-called friends quickly piped up. She sounded more confident and not at all apologetic. "Yeah, and don't go crying like a baby." I panicked. My mind went into overdrive. "What did I do wrong?" I asked. "Was it something I said? Or did? Give me a chance to fix it. I'm so sorry." My voice trailed off in a stuttering mess of apologies. I felt like they had just poured salt, a pound of salt, over an already open wound of rejection. Just as the tears were about to descend, I clenched my jaw and used every ounce of strength I could muster to keep myself from crying. I was proud of myself. My eyes welled so much I could barely see, but not one tear dropped. Not one. I knew what I had to do. Pull myself up, be strong, keep it together, pretend as if the conversation never happened. It was the story of my life, building up even greater walls to shut down my emotions. I ended up walking around by myself, aimlessly wandering through the mall. I was devastated, utterly and absolutely devastated. Though it may seem like a silly event, it wielded enough power to stick with me through the years. It confirmed in my mind that I wasn't important, that I didn't matter, that nobody wanted me, not even my best friends. So that's the end of that section. And you know what? I just know far too many teenagers can really relate to that situation. How many friends, have had another friend, reject them, or a group of girls suddenly turn on them and they feel so alone in that situation. And so I really wanted to read that part for you guys today. And then I was going to read you some of that, but I think I'm going to skip to near the end. Read something a little happier. Okay, I'm going to read this for you. Okay.
I'm going to give a little synopsis of the big picture of your life.
Yeah. So as I read this little bit from the end, a lot of my story has a lot to do with sexual abuse. Something else, unfortunately, I know far too many of you have experienced, and it's something like 1 in 4 kids, suffer sexual abuse. And so I wanted to tell my story, and part of it I do in near the beginning. But so near the end, this is what I write. As I sought healing from my sexual abuse, my counselors guided me down a winding road of challenges. It started with a decision. I had to first admit my victimization, and second, refuse to be a victim. Yes, I was abused. No, I'm not going to live the rest of my life feeling sorry for myself. Healing would never fully find its way into my heart without giving up a victim mentality. This didn't mean, however, I didn't mourn my pain. I had to love myself enough to grieve what I needed to grieve. I had to value myself enough to sift through the emotional wounds, but not stay there. I also would never be emotionally whole without learning to forgive others, and most importantly, myself. When I recently read the diary I had written during my teen years, I cringed. Drinking and smoking this much on that night, getting wasted at a family get-together, calling my mom every name in the book. A myriad of emotions surfaced. I shook my head in disbelief. I was ashamed and embarrassed of the person I once was, someone so different from who I am today. I dropped the book on the floor, not ever wanting to pick it back up. I was even tempted to burn it, to remove it from existence. Suddenly, I remembered the words, "Those that are the hardest to love need it the most." I love that statement. I say it all the time to remind myself to handle certain people with care. I say it to my parents, I say it to my friends, I say it to Justin. I couldn't get the saying out of my mind. Then the thought came to me. You apply this statement to everyone in your life, so why can't you accept it for yourself? Why can't you love you? The truth was shocking. It wasn't the adult Pattie I didn't love, it was the teenage Pattie. I couldn't stand the hardened, rebellious defiant teenager I used to be. Days later, I revisited my thoughts with a counselor. I was finally able to sift through the discomfort. Faced head-on with the question and working through it with someone I trusted, I had an awakening. I started releasing the hatred I had for myself as a teenager, for the terrible decisions I had made, for the stupid things I had said and done. I started remembering how my previous therapist had tried to get me to look in a mirror and say, "I love you." It was almost impossible. I tried it once or twice, but hated it. It made me feel weird, strange, even like an imposter. But if I don't love myself, how can I love others? And if I can't receive love, how can I give love? All the commandments can be summed up into two. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. If I can't love others, I can't love others if I don't love myself. So I'm learning how to love myself. I wasn't the only person I needed to forgive. There was a lot of people in my life where I needed to extend the same grace. My dad, my mom, my abusers, Jeremy. Sometimes it felt never-ending. As I continued the healing process, I started realizing that forgiveness is not a one-shot deal. Simply saying, "I forgive you," doesn't make the pain go away, the hurt, or the injustices that was done. I had to continually live from a place of forgiving, sometimes daily, sometimes hourly. There were times it seemed impossible. During my moments of struggle, I had to ask God for help. I figured if He was willing to forgive me, if He was willing to send His only Son to die on the cross so I could be forgiven, surely He would help me forgive others. Though it didn't always happen instantaneously, I found myself able to forgive through His grace alone. I've also prayed for help when I needed to love others or be patient, but didn't have the tools to do so. I love the saying, unforgiveness is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. The fact was, if I didn't reach out and forgive, I'd be the one ultimately hurt. I would be held hostage by bitterness. My unforgiveness could even extend outward. It could affect me, not just emotionally, but in many areas such as my relationships or even physical health. Several medical studies have linked unforgiveness with sickness, disease, and depression. One definition of forgiveness is letting go of your right to get even. It doesn't mean injustice was okay. While I didn't have a choice in how I was hurt or broken, I had a choice to forgive. I had a choice to let the pain define me or to heal from its wounds. I made the choice to heal. I made the choice to move on without those wounds crippling my journey. I made the choice to live, to really live. It has not been easy, but it has been worth it. Thank you, guys.